The question was barely louder than a whisper, yet it cut through the polished silence of the bakery like a crack in glass, the kind of sound that lingers long after it fades, because it carries desperation, hope, and shame all at once. A man stood near the counter with shoulders bent forward as if the weight of the world had finally decided to rest on his back, and in that single moment, everything that was about to change had already begun. Before the story pulls you any deeper, take a second right now and show some love if you believe in kindness, second chances, and unseen miracles. Like this video, share it with someone who needs hope today, subscribe to the channel for more stories that touch the heart, and tell us in the comments where you are watching from, because this story is for every corner of the world where someone is struggling quietly. The man's name was Daniel Carter, a former construction worker whose life had once been loud with machinery, laughter, and plans for the future. Those days felt like a distant dream now. After an accident crushed his leg and left him unable to work, everything else began to fall apart in slow motion. Medical bills arrived like relentless waves, his savings dissolved, and the small apartment he shared with his daughter Amelia became colder and emptier each month, not because the heat stopped working, but because hope was slowly leaking out of the walls. Amelia was turning 6 that day, an age filled with innocent wishes and simple dreams, the kind that usually involve balloons, candles, and a cake with too much frosting. Daniel had promised her one, not because he had the money, but because a father's promise sometimes feels like the last thing holding a broken man together. The bakery stood at the corner of a wealthy district, its glass windows glowing with warm light, displaying cakes decorated like works of art. Daniel had walked past it many times, telling himself not to look, but that morning his legs carried him there anyway. He counted the few crumpled bills in his pocket again and again, knowing they were not enough, yet stepping inside as if hope itself had pushed the door open. The smell of sugar and vanilla wrapped around him, reminding him of better birthdays, better years, and a time when he could give without fear. He waited, rehearsing words in his mind, each version sounding more humiliating than the last, until he finally spoke, asking if there was an expired cake, something unsold, something that could still make a little girl smile. Behind the scenes of this moment stood Jonathan Reed, a self-made millionaire whose name was known across the city for luxury developments, high-profile deals, and a lifestyle most people only saw in magazines. That morning, Jonathan had come to the bakery unannounced, seeking quiet more than food. Success had given him everything except peace. His days were full of meetings, numbers, and obligations, but his nights were haunted by memories he rarely allowed himself to face. Years ago, he had lost his own daughter to illness, a loss that shattered his marriage and hardened his heart in ways money could never repair. He had built walls of success around himself, believing that if he stayed busy enough, the pain would eventually surrender. When Daniel's question drifted through the air, it reached Jonathan like an echo from another life. He did not turn immediately. Instead, he felt his chest tighten, as if something fragile inside him had been touched without warning. He listened, not just to the words, but to the exhaustion beneath them, the kind that comes from trying every door and finding them all locked. The bakery staff froze, unsure how to respond, their training unprepared for raw humanity. Time seemed to slow, stretching the moment into something heavy and uncomfortable, yet impossible to ignore. Daniel stood there, eyes lowered, already preparing himself for rejection. He told himself that he would leave quietly, that Amelia did not need a cake to know she was loved, even though deep down he knew how much it mattered to her. He remembered the way she talked about birthdays at school, about candles and wishes, and how she had smiled bravely when he told her they would celebrate at home this year. He had seen that smile before, the one children wear to protect their parents from guilt, and it hurt more than any injury he had ever endured. Jonathan finally turned, and in that instant, something shifted. He saw not a beggar, not an inconvenience, but a reflection of a life that could have been his if circumstances had tilted just a little differently. He saw a father fighting to preserve magic in a world that had taken too much. The millionaire who had negotiated million-dollar deals without blinking now found himself unable to look away. He began to ask questions, gently at first, then with growing intensity, learning about Amelia, about the accident, about the quiet nights Daniel spent staring at the ceiling, wondering how to stretch tomorrow's hope a little further. The bakery, once a place of indulgence, transformed into a stage for something profoundly human. Jonathan listened as Daniel's story unfolded, each detail stripping away layers of indifference Jonathan had worn for years. He felt memories surface, memories of hospital rooms, small hands, and promises he never got to keep. For the first time in a long while, his wealth felt insignificant, almost embarrassing, in the face of such raw need. What happened next did not explode like a miracle in a movie. It unfolded slowly, deliberately, the way real change often does. Jonathan insisted on buying a cake, not just any cake, but the one Amelia had pointed to in the display window weeks ago when Daniel had carried her past the bakery, promising her someday. He arranged for candles, decorations, and a delivery straight to their apartment. But he did not stop there. He saw beyond the birthday, beyond the immediate fix, and into the long road Daniel still had to walk. Over the following days, Jonathan quietly stepped into Daniel's life, not as a savior on a pedestal, but as someone determined to right a wrong the world had casually inflicted. He connected Daniel with medical specialists, helping him access rehabilitation that insurance had denied. He offered him training for a desk-based role in one of his companies, valuing Daniel's experience and work ethic over his physical limitations. Each step was taken with respect, preserving Daniel's dignity, because charity without dignity is just another form of cruelty. Amelia's birthday arrived with laughter echoing through the small apartment, balloons brushing the ceiling, and a cake that seemed too beautiful to cut. Her eyes sparkled with joy, unaware of the chain of events that had brought it there, but fully aware that she was loved. Daniel watched her make a wish, tears blurring his vision, realizing that sometimes hope arrives disguised as a stranger who listens when no one else will. As weeks turned into months, Daniel's life began to stabilize. The pain did not vanish, nor did the scars, but they softened around the edges. He returned to work, regained a sense of purpose, and began to plan again, not grand dreams, but steady ones. Jonathan, in turn, found something he had been missing for years. In helping Daniel and Amelia, he allowed himself to grieve, to feel, and to heal in ways he had never permitted before. He visited them occasionally, not as a benefactor, but as a friend, discovering that connection was worth more than any acquisition he had ever made. This story is not about wealth swooping in to fix everything. It is about listening, about seeing the humanity in a moment most people would rush past. It is about how a single question, spoken with trembling hope, can pierce the armor of even the most guarded heart. It reminds us that kindness is not measured by what we give, but by how deeply we are willing to understand another person's pain. If this story has reached into your heart, if it reminded you of someone you love or a moment you almost gave up, please take a second to like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps keep stories like this alive, reaching people who need them most. And before this story ends, leave a comment telling us about a moment when kindness changed your life, or when you wish someone had listened to you. The bakery still stands on that corner, its windows glowing every evening, but for Daniel, it will always be the place where hope quietly returned. For Jonathan, it became a reminder that the greatest investments are not found on balance sheets, but in the fragile, powerful moments when one human truly hears another. And somewhere in a small apartment filled with laughter, a little girl grows up believing that even when the world feels cold and unfair, kindness can walk through any door, unexpected, gentle, and life-changing.